Welcome to the XY Advisor podcast. To join a global community of financial advisors sharing and learning with one another to drive the positive evolution of financial advice, head to xyadvisor.com. This podcast is brought to you in partnership with Hub24. Hub24 make a difference in the lives of advisors by connecting you to innovative solutions that create opportunities with market-leading managed portfolios and customer service excellence. Want to know more? Visit hub24.com.au. G'day, Clayton here from XY, chatting with Dawn all the way over in WA. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me, Clayton.
Yeah. So we were chatting just before we hit the record button, and I was like, wow, you've won all the, you've been nominated for a bunch of awards. You're on all these podcasts, and you were like, well, hold up. Like there are a couple of awards and a couple of podcasts, but I'm like, no, this is financial planning. You got to spruik everything. So it's awesome to have you on. And then your career is kind of interesting because you started in media and you've come across into financial planning with this awesome story. So I'd love to dive into it. So what made you want to get into media in the first place?
I think I came from Singapore, and I got to Australia because I wanted to pursue journalism. And in Singapore, you're very science and maths based, and that was fine to an extent, but I felt that there was this untapped area in my life where I didn't explore. My dad was in broadcasting for over 30 years, and he's a very talented man. I don't have even 10% of his talent, but I really felt motivated to want to write. Like, it was just something in me. So I had to really convince my parents that I was not going down the pathway of a engineer or scientist. You hear the Asian stereotypes. It's quite true. There's pressure to be in one of those jobs, and to be able for them to be fine enough that I was going to be a failure and go into the arts. Yeah, and I ended up in Murdoch University in WA, and that's when I think my heart really just opened up to this world of media and people's stories. From writing, I was exposed to other majors such as film and television and radio, and really it was radio that every week we had to go out, within our communities and find interesting stories. We had to ask, would our audience find it interesting? Why is this important to tell? Why is this important story? So it became very wired in me to kind of go, what's your story? Sorry, that was the motivation. That's how I ended up at Murdoch University. Yeah.
Yeah, it's I'm just sort of already aligning that motivation in your career with financial planning, because financial planning is really particular in that being able to do numbers, and we're going to get to all that because you sort of created your career in financial planning through the banks and your Masters of Applied Finance and all these they're really just tick boxes, but it's what's that interest in the humanities combined with that sort of STEM view of the world, which I find is a really interesting mix of characters, which creates financial planning. And so that's a super interesting place to come at financial planning from. Like, you're interested in people's stories.
Yes. And I think that's where I feel that it's my job to be really visible, to tell this story of someone that I couldn't say that I'm the most creative person, because I'm not. I'm somewhere in the middle. I can do your financial concepts. I get it. But communication is a bit key. And I really hope that people coming into financial planning, and when they have to decide at university level, that they understand that they have a place if they can communicate and actually listen to people's stories. I'm not sure if that's actually happening now, Clayton, because we've got a new education standard where someone has to determine when they're 18 or 19 that they want to go into financial planning. I took a while to understand that was my place in the world, but I started off with media studies. So I guess maybe the broader question is that how can we attract those people? Are we, with the changes to FASEA, are we going to stop those people who are more visual and artistic and maybe could do a modern dance with your financial plan? How are they going to end up in our industry?
Yeah, because obviously, like, the profession wants to attract the best and brightest.
Yes.
And it does come down to, again, that sort of that separation between practitioners and those that are writing the rules. And that is the list of degrees that applies, I guess, conforms to what is required, doesn't involve degrees like psychology, for example. So a mate of mine got into financial advice, was a financial advisor, decided to go to uni, decided to study psychology, and now all of a sudden that's not good enough. Like that's, to me, that's crazy that taking the view of specializing in people isn't considered a benefit in financial planning. To me, that blows. I just think that's ridiculous, right? Like, and he's good at math and he does everything, but it does seem like the requirements are super heavy on the academic math-based side.
Yes, which is I think it doesn't really accurately describe how we successfully do our job. Yes, it's one way to describe how we do our job, but if you want to do it successfully, you need a wide range of skills. If you're missing that people component, then probably you've missed the mark of being a financial advisor.
Yeah, I fully agree. And so you've taken this. So I assume you successfully graduated from yes.
And no choice. I was an international student.
Touche. Yeah. And then, so how quickly between graduation and becoming a financial planner at the bank, how big of a gap was that?
So that was, okay. So about 2 years after I graduated, I was a waitress. Of course, that made my parents very proud that I was paying my own way. And also, ended up finding my husband as well, which was interesting. Parents, my parents, everything they were scared about was happening. But I found that when I was actually a waitress, I learned to connect with people very quickly. So, my husband that's where I met him. He was managing the restaurant that I worked, and he would just push me out because I used to be so shy about talking to people.
Right.
And he's like, "You've got 2 minutes to kind of create rapport."
Yeah.
And I went from that fear to, after that, being, it was easy enough to try and find a thing. So again, it was like that training into how do you deal with people. And then I entered the bank because I did apply for graduate programs and things like that. But I think maybe with some complications around the fact that I was still applying for my permanent residency.
Definitely.
Not really successful.
Yeah.
Or there were a few spots. And the bank accepted me. So even like Flight Center rejected me because I was not good enough. But the bank, they were open-minded enough. So within 6 months of joining the bank, I was on the financial planning graduate program.
Wow. Which bank was this?
This was BankWest.
Oh, cool.
Now in the CBA group, but there was a manager there who recognized, to be able to see, I suppose, will versus skill. He knew that.
Yes. That's good.
So,
yeah.
So I think also it takes like open-minded people to kind of see that you can fit into financial planning, because it's about people rather than the technical aspects.
That's a hugely good point. Yes, it does. Because the weird thing about the career in financial planning is that you might fit in. You might be a really good power planner. But if you're a really good power planner, it doesn't necessarily mean you'll be a really good advisor. And if you'll be a really good advisor, you may actually be not a very good power planner.
Oh yeah, I would be terrible.
And I started my career out. So I went from accounting into power planning because I didn't know how to get into advice, but I actually started out my career in the arts as well. So I sort of went arts to accounting to power planning, and it was very clunky and it was very difficult until I finally got into advice. And then I was like, oh, okay, I know where I'm meant to be. And so that's awesome that you sort of had this background in, first of all, interested in people's stories, then learning how to create rapport. Now you're in the bank, and how long was that, I guess, training program? How long did that go for?
Yes, that went for about 15 months. And it was 15 months of actually surviving one redundancy through that, because we had CBA's takeover of BankWest. So we went from a 14-person program to a 3-person program. We had to re-interview in that time. And I think I went into that going, no, there's absolutely no doubt. Like I was hungry for it, because they did give us options to actually link pathways into the bank. And I was successful. So I was the only one WA, and the other two were over East. But I was the only one that made it out as an actual advisor as well. So I think that's always carried me through, is that when I pursue something, I pursue it with all of me.
Awesome.
yeah, so 15 months, and then I was out, helping clients that were coming through the retail space. So a lot of mom and dads.
Yeah, and it's a great place for, I mean, maybe not so much these days. Like obviously the banks are getting more and more out of financial planning, so that may entirely dry up that method to get into financial planning. And think about, you were one of 14 and then one of one in the end, right? And Bank West, that's not like a small institution. So the traditional ways of getting into becoming a financial planner are definitely becoming harder and harder. And to make that journey more interesting, you found out you were pregnant.
Yes. So it's like, because I knew I was going to go out into financial advice. So I had a conversation with one of the managers, and he said, we're not going to tell you when you're ready to come out to be a financial advisor. Right. And that for me was a very interesting thing for me to hear, because, for my Asian background, we wait till we're told, there's a very like hierarchical system and things like that. But I realized in Australia, you need to kind of basically speak up and say, I'm ready for this. So that's something I had to learn, because I was like, no, they'll see my hard work. But they kind of went, if you're not going to ask for it, then nobody thinks you're serious enough. So that's part of me as well. Being someone coming over to Australia, was learning how people communicate differently. And not to make the assumption. And so I put my hand forward for it, not knowing that I was going to get pregnant around the corner, but also because I finished all my diplomas, I wanted to do the Masters of Applied Finance. And the bank was very kind to actually pay for that whole course for me.
Wow.
So finding it out was terrifying, Clayton, because I didn't know what to do. I felt really that was going to be the end of my career. And I think, I don't think that's an irrational thought. I think it's a very real thing that could happen to any woman in that position. I had a conversation with a senior person at the bank. And then he told me, he was like, Dawn, when you call me, I thought you're going to tell me that you're going to want to drop out of being a financial advisor. That was what I was afraid of. He said, you're pregnant. Congratulations.
Yes.
I was like, oh. Yeah. So I'm very thankful that I've met some brilliant people on the way that have, they've allowed me to continue, but I think you can find yourself in environments where that might not be the case. So the first year of being pregnant, I went, no, I'm not going to let this baby get in the way of my targets. Like I'm going to do it.
I know exactly what you're talking about, because so my wife Vera, she was pregnant after a handful of years working her way up in IT consulting, and then she was super, wanted to hold the professionalism above all else kind of thing. And then the little guy comes around and, a lot changes, right? You go, oh, wow, there's more to life than just doing it. But at the same time, and I can tell you're the same, like being a mother, from what I can see, is great, but also you've got so much more to do as well.
Yes. I feel being a financial advisor makes me a better mom, and me being a mom makes me a more confident financial advisor, because I learned I maintain the boundaries that I want between my family and work. Like I will give everything for my workplace.
Yes.
But there is a line there that my family is the one that drives everything that I do, so I think that helps me out. But you get through it. I think you understand what resilience is, even though you may not realize you're resilient, and I took about 3 months off with the first 2 kids. And the last one was 4 months, but I went to labor with him 5 weeks early. So I remember a client seeing me and she went, I don't think you've got long to go. I'm like, no, don't say that. I said, I'm not off for another 2 weeks. I've got things to do. And I was like waddling. By this time I was like waddling through to get home. And then I went into labor, and I remember like standing there at the mercy of my husband. I'm like, please let me bring my laptop.
That's so good.
He just looked at me, and I knew all the power was in his hands, because the right answer would be, don't give this mad woman her laptop. But he knew that it would kill me. So he let me bring it. And then in the hospital, they told me, no, you're not actually really in labor. So I'm calling clients. Oh, remember I told you I'm in labor? No, I'm not in labor. I'll see you in 2 days. Then they told me, no, then I gave birth. I said, remember I told you it was false? No, I actually did give birth.
Now I'm a parent to a 3rd child. So maybe let's push our meeting out just a couple of weeks.
Oh, no, I actually did a planned presentation from the hospital bed as well. So
Stop it.
Yeah.
Dawn, that is amazing. That is peak financial planning. Oh, holy dooly. I think you win all the awards. any of the awards that are out there that you're nominated for, you have to win them all purely for that point alone.
So basically, I had my C-section. They gave me enough drugs, so I couldn't feel anything anyway from the waist down. Enough to prop a laptop up. The story was that the client, if I had delayed it, I felt that she was not going to get her age pension entitlements, and I knew she needed it.
Wow.
I mean, it was not her fault that she had a pregnant advisor. It's a very weird way of looking at it. That was my feelings at the time. And I knew that I could and I wanted to. So that's what I did. You know, it was easy enough to give her a call. We posted off everything, and it was done, you know, and that for me gave me peace of mind. So, yeah.
It's amazing. It's an amazing story. It's, and I totally get like your frame of reference where you're thinking, yes, it's my choice to have a child, but this person who desperately needs this thing for their life, they shouldn't have to suffer. And I mean, it's a very, dare I use the word, magnanimous. It's a very high, you know, view of your, you know, that you must have of your own profession and your own of your role in your client's life. And it's awesome. Like, you know, I'm a big fan of all that sort of stuff. So, you found out you were pregnant when you were given notice of your first financial planning role. And then and thankfully, you know, you were looked after and you've gone on to build a fantastic family, which is awesome. Yeah. And then during all that period, were you working with the bank the whole time?
Yes, I was working with the bank. Yeah.
That's fantastic. And what are the sort of the pros and the cons of working in an environment like that?
Well, I think you always you've been always told that the bank is actually a training ground where people really learn to get their first experiences at the bank. So I think that was a real pro. I mean, they sent me for leadership courses. In addition to my Masters of Applied Finance, they also paid for my CFP certification. So yeah, I mean, I knew that the banking system hadn't caught up to working moms being in the system. So my bonuses were affected and my ability to get pay rises, but I just asked for other things, like pay for my studies. So so sometimes it's systematically, they can't catch up because it's just been something that's been ingrained. It's going to take a lot of work. And I think it's already improved since then, probably not where it needs to be, but we have to find a way to navigate the system and kind of amend it to our favor. So I know that I couldn't get the normal ways of being rewarded for my effort because the normal systems were in place. But I decided that there were other ways that they could do that. And I think the bank tried to do that, you know, like with the leadership courses that I had, they were amazing. They put me in touch with my first mentors and I've continued that. The mentor that I met at that time is still a mentor today. Awesome. So it's quite an intangible value as well. Yeah. So I would say whatever situation you're in, if you're in a large organization, there are disadvantages, but you should be able to find the ways to make it work in your favor. Yeah,
no, I fully agree. And then so in total, how long were you a financial planner, including the training? How long were you with Bank West for?
Over 9 years.
That's huge, right? Yes. That's a huge amount of time. Yes. And during that whole time, you've gone from, you know, like a media student, right, up into like a CFP, Masters of Finance. That's a great story. That's super cool. And then over the last couple of years, you've now moved into, I guess you would call it the independent, the IFA market, right? So. Yes. So what was, I guess, what were the biggest differences and what were the biggest learning curves?
Well, the first difference was that my boss gave me an offer of employment within 15 hours. So I was like, you know, in a bank, you know that it's a 6-week process. Yeah. You go through aptitude testing and then you've got to go through round 1 and round 2. Yeah. I was like, really? Is that it? You know, but he had spent a number of months already communicating to me that he wanted me to be part of his business and see me there long term. So that was the first thing that I sought. But also the fact that he kind of went, well, you're an adult. We hired you for a reason. Now you just find your way to be out there and get clients. So for me, I think that's why I found so much of who I was. I was always there, but I think being able to allow who I am to be more accessible, more widely, is something that I've learned since I've been at Wealthwise. You know, and that's purely from having a boss like Jamie Luxton, who just really just lets people be who they are. So I think it's just that kind of evolution. Probably I was ready at that time when I left the bank to use my voice more And
Yeah.
definitely the last 3 years, I've found it and I've used it.
That's amazing. And I guess now this goes back to not only discovering interesting stories in your clients, but also helping telling your own story in a way.
Yes, I think we, as female advisors, especially, we can't kind of say, oh, I don't like the spotlight, or I'm just going to do my work here. I'm not interested in all of those things, because I think, especially like I told you before, with the phasea requirements, that could be a barrier for some women of childbearing age, as they term us when we're younger, uh, so getting in. So I need to let people know that, first of all, the kind of advice that we give, whether you're male or female, but a more nurturing form of advice, a more connected form of advice, is a very valid form of advice. But if you don't see that, you won't know. People in the public who connect to that will not know. People who want to be financial advisors and who can provide that will not know either. So I think it is extremely important to be visible, to be heard, to be seen. I'm very big on that. And maybe people who don't get why representation is needed, they might see it as a spotlight thing. If you've got the luxury of it being a spotlight exercise, you're not in a group that needs to be represented.
Right. I think I understand what you mean. So it's like, if you want to normalize the message that you want to send, it does force you to put your hand up and just say, there should be more people who are speaking like this.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many wonderful stories of advice and impacts of advice, but maybe we don't hear it because there's different forms of advice. I think still in our industry is very much like, in our industry is like, there's still an awe factor for someone that deals with multimillionaires or billionaires and, brings in huge revenue streams, But what about the people who are also making an impact for the everyday Australian, the mums and dads? That's an impact too.
Yes.
If you think about how much money you can preserve someone or maximize through age pension strategies or super boosting, and if they don't have a large pool of money, that difference is huge to them. It's huge because they might be able to afford that extra holiday a year, or be able to go and see their grandchildren more who might be interstate. So I believe those stories need to make it out there as well, because we all do this for different reasons. There's no wrong or right, but those stories should be heard.
Yeah, I fully agree. So what are you doing in your career to get those stories out there?
I'm being really annoying via LinkedIn. Probably post a lot.
You can't say that's annoying because I see your stuff and I'm like, that's cool. So if you're doing something annoying on LinkedIn, the algorithm's not feeding it to me.
Yeah, I post. LinkedIn is a professional network, and I have a lot of connections through firstly the banking space, but now over the last 3 years, built a lot from the financial planning space, financial coaches, academics as well. So for me, that is my main platform to just tell different stories. The story I'm telling is not just about finance, but the story is the impact of advice, but also an advisor who's a parent, or an advisor that's coming to Australia as an immigrant. It's just about different stories, and they'll connect to different people. It might not connect to loads of people, but it'll connect to the people that
it should connect with.
Yeah,
absolutely. That is definitely the point of LinkedIn. The LinkedIn is not to have a 10-kilometer wide net that only goes, 10 inches deep. It's the opposite, right? You want a very small audience and go very deep and to connect with them as much as possible.
Yes.
And to me, it's still bizarre, and it's very common that people don't use LinkedIn the way that you're using LinkedIn. Like, people should be, and for those that understand that's how LinkedIn is to be used, it's hugely powerful. And to me, I don't think there's or at least I can't tell, to my mind, financial planners are better suited to LinkedIn than any other career. I mean, it is just, considering the importance of it, money is so important, but people are so concerned that they're going to get ripped off by a financial planner that they don't like to take a choice or step in that decision. And so, considering the risk to reward the risk is high, because everyone's seen the headlines, right? The bad financial planners, they're not just a myth, they do exist. And every financial planner can attest to that. And so we understand, probably more so than the average person, that the risk of falling into the hands of someone who's not going to look after you is high.
Yes.
But if you do fall into the hands of someone who's, my goodness, taking meetings on the bed that they give birth in.
No, that's not a normal thing. We don't recommend that.
No, okay, but you get the point. I mean, it's almost the epitome of what a good advisor does. And you know, if you end up in the hands of someone like that, then your life ends up in such a better position. And so advisors understand the risk is high and the reward is high. And then I think almost people understand that risk exists, but they don't fully understand it. They know that it's there. They know that the risk is high but the reward is high, but they don't know how to solve the problem. And so when financial planners go onto LinkedIn and say, hey, this is who I am, this is what I believe in, these are the problems that my clients are having, these are the solutions that we're discussing with them, and these are the results that they're getting. Follow me, listen to what I'm saying. If you never reach out and say hi, so be it. Hopefully that this makes your day better regardless, right? There's no, I mean, a mechanic isn't going to get as good a results. I mean, maybe if they're a fantastic mechanic and they're really hilarious on their LinkedIn videos, potentially, you know, I'll get a call from some mechanic at this stage saying, no, it really works for me. But like, I just think for financial planners, the way that you're using LinkedIn, there's certainly enough room on LinkedIn. There's 700 million users, something like that. There's 20,000 advisors in Australia. Probably, actually, no, I know that there's much less now after everyone. So there's probably like 17,000. The audience is so large that every advisor in Australia, if not the world, should be on there doing exactly what you're doing. And I got to say, I just feel like you're doing it really well. And to hear, that you come from the media background, I go, huh. That explains, your ability to do so well on that platform. So yeah, I mean, it's really cool what you put out there.
Oh, thank you. I mean, I for me, it's always important that it really comes from who I am, but I must say it takes a certain amount of vulnerability to put it out there.
Yeah.
But what I have noticed is that if I share an article that's just about a budget update or something like that, people don't engage with it. It's not something they engage. I think maybe because they see so much of it, or they're bombarded with it. What people want to see, in my experience, is that they want to see something personalized. But they also, I think what you said as well, Clayton, about how people perceive us as an industry, that maybe in a lot of times you can get in trouble if you're with the wrong person. But I think what financial advisors feel, or those of us who are here now, is that we have a distrust of the industry ourselves because of maybe what we've seen in the past. Maybe that's work that we have to do, that I have to also kind of go, look, I trust my industry. I want to say that it's now the exception that have done the wrong thing.
Yes.
But it's the bulk. So I need to be going, I'm going to celebrate the stories of where it's working out really well. And LinkedIn, you can connect up to people who are like-minded, people that will inspire because of the work you're doing. I mean, and that's why, I've got no problems sharing podcasts from other advisors, or telling my clients, hey, listen to this podcast. Like, I'm not afraid of my client going to another advisor. I'm about, let's celebrate this amazing stuff people have put a lot of time into that's going to help us in our profession.
Yeah.
So we need to lift it as a whole. I think we can't be scared that someone else is going to steal our client or the industry as a whole is bad. We need to step in and go, we are of value, and we need to stand together to do that.
Yeah, I fully agree. I mean, that's precisely what XY has been sort of founded on a few years ago.
Yeah.
And to help play a small role in the advice industry coming together and sort of collectively lifting has been a huge benefit. And it's kind of cool because I get to spend my days taking phone calls and having conversations with the best advisors in Australia. And so maybe I'm skewed in thinking that the industry's come such a huge way in such a short amount of time, but all I see is positivity in terms of the opportunity. I mean, the way that you're going about communicating what you do on LinkedIn, I think, again, it should be super commended. And I just want to, like, any advisor that's listening, like, the bar, you need to lower the bar in your mind of how difficult it is, right? So if you could perhaps, and I think you've got a really interesting insight, if you could perhaps go back to straight out of uni and you've got that 2 minutes to connect with, someone at your work, is the fear that you experienced in starting out all those years ago as a waitress, do you feel like there's any sort of analogy or similar fear to when you wanted to start, posting publicly and vulnerably on LinkedIn? Is there any analogy there?
Yeah, I think you just got to try and see what works. But the other thing as well is that you can't wait for other people to tell you that it's okay, because largely there were people from the banking background that told me that, that women who also told me that why would we share anything personal on LinkedIn? Because we do this. So they were probably about 10 or 15 years older than me. And I understand that they came into an environment where they had to be pretty much, for them to play, they were playing even on more unequal terms than I did. So they've learned to protect anything that could make them look as vulnerable or weak. So I get where they're coming from. So for me, I had to listen to what I felt I was willing to do. So I think if you want to be able to make your mark, you also have to dare to be different. And being different could fail, but it's okay. You learn from it. And you're not going to go viral. Like, I don't go viral.
Totally.
But the 7 people that may engage in my posts are people who are, who are going to have really meaningful relationships with. So even, for example, my video, I did a 2 video series on YouTube. I launched a YouTube channel this year, and I mix cooking videos in there, 2 cocktail ones in there. I thought, it's my content. I can do whatever I want. I don't care.
Hell
if
yeah.
really, yeah. I was like, nobody's paying me to do this. I'm doing this myself on my own time.
Yeah.
So, but I did have somebody that was, interestingly enough, told me that who was not really in my sphere of advocacy or mentoring, but they felt they were doing me a favor by giving me feedback. They said that they felt that my content wouldn't be of any value to anyone. And the thing is that I know my audience. Like, I don't need anyone else to know who my audience is.
Totally.
Because my audience is my audience. Your audience is yours. I'm not going to tell you how to reach your audience.
Yeah.
But I know how I communicate with my audience. So for me to get messages from people within the industry telling me that my videos help them, and they were not my intended audience. I thought it was more for people who want to learn. But I realized that people in the industry who are struggling with, how do I communicate these concepts to clients? And apparently some of these videos just help them kind of simplify what we can say to clients around things around super.
Yeah.
So that keeps me going, so those positive people that tell me that it's of value, I'm like, yeah, I will take more time in December and I'll make more videos for you.
Hey, look, totally. I've seen such a huge range of content come out of financial planners, especially in the last 12 months. In the last 12 months, it's almost like, because of everything that's happened in the industry, you've got such huge amounts of advisors going, okay, we need to step up this game of attracting the people that we want to speak to. And so you're seeing a huge array of stuff on your end. You've got the brightly colored suit, right? It's fantastic. And on the other end, you've got guys that are sort of wearing baseball caps and in the gym. And there are markets, there's huge markets that specifically are aiming for people who speak and talk and act a certain way. And it's kind of cool. Like, I'm a huge fan of it. And one of the things is I'll never accept criticism from someone I wouldn't ask advice from.
Yeah.
So because everyone's an armchair critic. Hell, I'm an armchair critic, right? I'll watch something on TV and be like, I could have been, but they shouldn't be listening to me. I'm just sitting on my couch. And so, yeah, I'd never accept criticism from someone who I wouldn't ask for advice from. And I think it's awesome that, so what cocktails are on your YouTube channel? That truly is the question.
Well, I've got a quarantini.
A quarantini? Yes. That sounds phenomenal.
Because I was just like, I don't have any tequila at home, and we couldn't go out to the shops because we were actually being quarantined that time, coming back from Bali. A very bad timing trip. So I'm like, what do we have at home? And my husband got a pineapple or something. I think it was around that time. So I was like, okay, I'm going to use this. So you can find that if you go on my YouTube channel. That's
excellent.
And one of the other advisors, Cara, she gave me a challenge during this whole lockdown period that we're all going through. And she said, I want you to make, she gave me a cocktail challenge. I want to see a video of you making the old fashioned. It's like, okay, I'll rise to that challenge, Cara. So it's like, you've got people within the industry and we're all kind of supporting ourselves through this. And then I thought, why not? It's just a video. And the other thing was that I was capturing, aside from the cocktails, I had my in-laws here for 6 months, 3 months longer than they were supposed to be because they couldn't travel back to Holland. And what I did was I started capturing their recipes, but capturing the kids with their Oma and Opa and learning about these recipes, and I've had some clients actually share those links back to their friends in Holland.
That's amazing. Yeah,
so
no.
Australian family is teaching some Dutch families how to cook Dutch food. It's like,
yeah, it's pretty funny.
Yeah. So it's for my clients, I think they can connect to this material if they want to, because we do talk about food and family. And so it's, you never know, like it's, if they don't have, I mean, I've got 40 subscribers, which is very small. It's for people who are very sympathetic and want to just support my channel. But it is getting out there. You never know who it might reach. So because of the videos, I was put in touch with Money School, and they invited me on for their they did a whole range of debates online, and from that debate I met other financial coaches. That's how I ended up on one podcast. And I ended up on Yahoo Finance because of the Money School debate. So it's like one thing leads to another. You don't need millions of people watching your stuff. You just need the right people to connect to your content.
Totally. Well, Dawn, keep going. It's awesome to see. It's awesome to hear about your whole career. And yeah, just keep smashing it. And congratulations on, like I mentioned at the start, the handful of awards you've been nominated for and everything you're doing out there. So thank you so much for coming on and sharing, with the XY Advisor community. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Peyton.